Naka, and welcome to For the Record. In a matter of weeks, the government will be presenting its new 2017-2018 national budget, and that naturally means the burden falls on the Fiji Revenue and Customs Authority to meet its targets and collect revenue for the government to meet its initiatives. With that in mind, my guests tonight are the Chief Executive of the Fiji Revenue and Customs Authority, Mr. Vishwanath Das, and the Director Corporate Services, Mr. Fazrul Rahman. Gentlemen, thank you very much for being on the show. First of all, as we head into a new budget announcement, Mr. Das, where does FRCA stand right now in terms of revenue collection for the government?
Thanks, Edwin. I think, everyone's asking the same question. I think, as always, certainly FRCA does its best in terms of administrating the tax laws, and as always, we just collect whatever is rightly due to us. I think, in terms of revenue collection, if you look at our numbers in the recent months, I think what we are seeing is definitely there's growth over same period last year. And in the recent, we have had, in the last 3 months, actually the revenue growth has been for more than 3% in February. March is the growth was around 4.3, and last month the growth is around 6%. So certainly we are agreeing well in terms of revenue collection.
And that's where Fazrul, your department comes in as head of corporate services. You're in charge of taxation and border control. In terms of making sure that people pay their taxes, businesses, workers, what sort of new initiatives have been introduced? How is this growth in collections being made possible?
Exactly. I think there have been significant reforms introduced in FRCA, and I think the main one had been the implementation of the new tax laws that we had introduced. The new Income Tax Act in particular that was introduced in 2015, effective from 2016, has introduced a number of mechanisms for us to look at the returns of taxpayers. And if you also look at the Tax Administration Act that was also introduced a few years back, has also given us significant powers. I think the strategies that had been introduced in recent times was to ensure that there is increased efforts towards looking at the holistic approach towards auditing. So now we are looking at the customs intelligence data. We are matching with the internal data that we have. We are also looking at the remittance data so that we could see for a fact what has been the true tax position of the income. So I think there has been significant effort being made towards ensuring that we apply risk management techniques in FRCA so that we could audit taxpayers in a more holistic way. We have also seen in recent times a number of whistleblowing cases being reported to FRCA. FRCA have seen about 88 cases being reported so far for the 9 months of the year. And we compare it for the whole of last year, the last financial year, it was about 137. So all in all, I think it shows that there's greater transparency in the community. FRCA is engaging effectively with its stakeholders. And of course, one of the important one has been we are trying to match data within the system as well as the data outside the FRCA.
How much of this collection, I know that FRCA has a very active, proactive approach towards compliance and voluntary payment. How much of the collection is voluntary compliance, people abiding by the law and paying their taxes, and how much of it is FRCA going out and putting people to task and making them pay up? What's the compliance level, would you say, Mr. Das?
I think, as alluded to earlier, that because we have significantly increased our engagement with the business community, the Fiji Institute of Accountants. So I would say that in terms of the natural revenue growth, most of it is coming from voluntary compliance. Now, as we have initiated sort of holistic audit investigations, now the impact of that is really that we are seeing lodgements increasing, and even in terms of if I look at the different tax types, I can see that actually corporate taxes are improving. So much of the impact is also coming through voluntary lodgements.
You both have mentioned the holistic auditing, holistic approach. Are you saying that you're not just looking at the paper information, your staff are actually going out to do inspections? How does that work?
Yes, actually it has been quite effective. When we look at any taxpayer in Fiji and we want to understand their tax behavior, it's important to understand their business strategies. It's good to understand what is their level of imports, level of exports, what is the flow of funds from the business in terms of money going to their suppliers, to the employees. We have seen recent successes through recent tax audits that we have done. For example, in recent times, it is noted that FRCA has intensified its audits, and we have done some raids as well. So when we do raids, we are able to pick up lots of information about the business affairs, and of course, we are very professional in doing such raids. But the fact of the matter is that when we get heaps of information in front of us and we do interaction with other tax officers, we do checks with the other customs authorities around the world. Basically, the point is that it has been very effective. So far, if we look at for the first 9 months, FRCA's compliance division has collected about $77 million. And if you look at, say, for last 3 months, CEO has mentioned, there has been increased revenue growth. And just from 3 companies, we have collected about $24 million in terms of fraud. So there's been major audits that were done by FRCA in the retail sector, in the motor vehicle sector, and of course other sectors as well. So just these 3 companies giving us a revenue of around 24 million signifies that there is a lot of money out there to be collected. But of course, when we do take these steps, it also sends a message to the community. So we are seeing some changing taxpayer behaviors as well, and it's also our duty as well to go and also educate taxpayers as well, so that everybody is aware of recent trends and how FRCA is going to deal with such trends.
24 million from 3 companies tells me that there are still entities out there who want to subvert the system. I'd like to pick on that, but right now we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll continue discussions. Good evening and welcome back to the show. We're speaking with the Chief Executive of the Fiji Revenue and Customs Authority, Mr. Vishwanath Das, and the Director of Corporate Services, Mr. Fazrul Rahman. Before the break, we talked about how there are still people who try to subvert the system, and we're not talking about small change here, $77 million through audits. What does that tell you about the level of non-compliance, Mr. Das?
I think it sends a very clear message that I will say, there's a huge amount of non-compliance still existent. And, one of the points that I'd like to highlight at this stage is that, when we are taking a holistic approach to the investigations, really what is happening is, I think in the past, Fiji Revenue and Customs Authority had not really capitalized on the in-house information that we have. Of course, tax and customs have always been under one roof. But one of the strategies that we have sort of implemented in our transformation journey of the authority is that we are taking a one organization approach. So by that, what we have done is actually we have brought the customs investigation and the tax investigation teams together. So what really happens, if you look at the business transactions, basically a taxpayer is also an importer. So therefore, he imports things from import things for his business and then sells it. So what really has happened is, we are able to use in-house information on how much they are importing. So they make a customs declaration, and therefore they pay duty and VAT on that. Now, on the other hand, when it comes to taxation, of course, they are engaging in business, they make sales, and they claim expenses for purchases. So, these recent cases that we have come across, which has gotten us the 77 million, you will find that, there has been huge undervaluation issues. And then when you take it to the tax side of things, there is huge overclaim of expenses, which basically reduces chargeable income, profit for taxation, and therefore reduces the tax bill.
But that they can't get away with that anymore from the process.
Of course, no more.
And how does that actually work when you make the reflection with their Fazul, with their import claims and then their taxation claims? How do you match the data? I mean, what do you look for?
Exactly. I think one of the fundamental issues around the financial statement is that when somebody imports something into the country, it has to be sold to customers, and then the profit and loss statement is going to declare figures like cost of goods sold. There will be associated figures around sales. So one of the important aspects of audit is to look at the credibility of such figures, and of course we do match data. And we also verify the data from the source. And we also understand who is giving the invoice. Is it a related company or is it an independent company, independent supplier of service or goods? So the fundamental consideration that goes in the integrated audit is to understand the entire chain of that transaction. And we also verify it with the actual money flowing out of the country as well. Because figures can be manipulated in the customs entry, and actually it has been manipulated. We have seen, and we have also collected revenue of such manipulation. But equally, it is important for FRCA to look at the actual payment history of the taxpayer. And FRCA, when it does its audit, we also check with other tax authorities, with other customs authorities. And one of the recent findings that we have seen is that there has been manipulation of invoices, of course, there's customs undervaluation, but equally there is a surge in money laundering cases as well. And formal studies have also shown that there is a direct link between tax evasion and money laundering. So when somebody is evading taxes, there is a high degree that there is money laundering happening at the same time. And
they have to hide the money.
Exactly.
somehow.
Exactly.
So from what you're saying, there's a lot of forensic accounting, auditing going on. Information is key. Can you say confidently now that FRCA is one step ahead of these people who try and not pay their taxes? Because all this while it's always been a catch-up game.
Yeah.
If you happen to get information, you go in, you do an audit, but now it seems that FRCA has sort of an overarching view of what's going on.
Yeah, certainly, because we have in the recent times actually improved our networks with our counterparts. As alluded to Fazul earlier, we have better links with our trading partner, customs administrations. So for us, it is very easy now. Say, for example, if somebody is importing things from Australia, of course, they make an export entry in Australia, and the same documentation should then be used as import entries here. So actually, just this morning, I've been reviewing a file, and it's a gross undervaluation, and the Fijian importer, is so confidently claiming that my valuation documents are correct, and we have on file evidence straight from the Australian Customs Authority of what the actual values are. So really our networks has improved, and also in terms of our networks with the banks have improved. Therefore, we know exactly how importers are remitting funds, and it's a great concern for us that some of the importers are sort of making multiple remittances on the same invoices, and that's where then it verges into money laundering and tax evasion.
And it's always the ones who already have a lot of money who are doing this. I mean, it's not a small business if you recoup $24 million in owed taxes. The rich basically getting richer.
From 3 companies, yeah.
I mean, what does that tell you about the mindset and the culture of some of these businesses?
I think it just simply it's sad though. But it's just that our tax-paying population culture is just reflective of that. There are people just simply are opportunists, and they think they can beat the system. But I'm sorry to say, but I think FRCA is now getting on top of its game, and therefore it's really not worth. And that's where, again, we are really not getting into too much of financial penalties. I think it is high time that the tax office is, simply wanting to take people for prosecutions.
And if you do, what could we see in the near future? This is something that's been talked about for a long time.
Yes.
Applying the law.
As we speak, actually, we are actually dealing with one case at the moment, and I think, we have got sufficient evidence, and I think we are in a good position to actually pursue this case as a money laundering case.
All right, and with that, we've come to the end of another segment, but very interesting, one case of money laundering about to go to court. We'll talk more about that after the break. And welcome back to For the Record. Possible case of money laundering going to the courts. Do you expect that will send a message to all others who are involved in similar practices? How confident are you?
I'm sure this is, at this stage, from tax office perspective, I think this will be like, one of the biggest case probably in the history of the tax office. So, we are very serious about this case. I think we certainly want the directors of this company put behind bars, because we mean serious business in this place.
How much money are we looking at?
At this stage, we haven't finalized the numbers, but, preliminary indicative numbers is, certainly 20 million plus.
$20 million worth of money laundering. That could be a landmark case for Fiji.
Yeah.
So that ties in with the work that the tax collection unit does.
That's right.
How many of these cases would you say come across your table on a daily basis? And how blatant is it?
Yeah, I think it's quite widespread. Actually, what we do in FRCA, we also do normal VAT audit checks on everybody's VAT return. And it also gives a signal to us on a daily basis that there's widespread attitude towards tax evasion. And it goes down to the simple issues of trying to add one extra zero in a tax return. So if your claim is $6,000, so it is being manipulated to be $60,000. So I think on day-to-day basis, FRCA is discovering a lot of tax evasion cases. And if you look at in the broader sense as well, we are talking about the medium-sized companies as well as we're talking about the large companies as well. So if you look at the small businesses, or rather those in the medium stage at the present time, we have seen a number of businesses lodging their tax return, and they are keeping their taxable income just below the tax threshold amount of $16,000. So if I can put some figures across the table, we have about 19,000 business returns lost to FRCA. These are the returns to do with the normal sole trader business. And if you look at how much of those returns are over the 16,000 tax threshold, it's only 5,000. So 5,000 out of the 19,000 that we receive are the ones who are over the tax threshold. But if you go and find out how much of those 5,000 are paying income taxes, it's only 5%. So basically, it sends a signal that the other 95%, there's a higher probability of overclaiming of expenses, manipulation of depreciation claims, manipulation of the employee cost claims, and of course, understatement of income. So the culture is quite widespread, and on day-to-day basis, we are discovering a lot of these cases. So the message is that it is not only the big companies that we are seeing the major transfer pricing related issues. It is also the day-to-day issues that we see in terms of the VAT return, income tax return that we do normal VAT audit checks on.
When this does happen, when you go to one of these businesses, maybe a small trader, and you tell them, look, we've caught you, this is all a lie, you've been evading taxes, do you see a change in their behavior? Do they start then paying taxes because they've been caught out, or is it a persistent act?
Well, you will find sort of both category of people. Some are sort of tidy their books and moving forward. They get up to date. But I would say there's a larger number who probably take chance. We have, in the recent, we are coming across cases that were audited, say, 5 years down the line. They were audited 3 years ago, and then immediately after the audit, probably they have a perception that FRCA will not get back to them in the next couple of years, and therefore they deliberately do this. So, to deal with those kind of cases, I think certainly, we have a legislative authority to increase the financial penalty, but even to that now we are saying no. I think, financial penalties don't create an impact, and probably prosecution is the way to go. So there are a group of taxpayers, who deliberately do this.
And that puts an additional burden on FRCA and on the other taxpayers who abide by the law.
Of course. This is grossly unfair for the compliant taxpayers, who sort of, are voluntarily complying, or they needed assistance, or after an audit they have sort of tidied up their things now going forward. So it is definitely it's unfair to them when we have these persistent deliberate tax evaders.
And one of the issues that was actually brought up by the Minister for Economy himself in a budget announcement was connecting supermarket cash registers to FRCA's database.
Yeah.
This, according to the Minister, was one of the big loopholes. There would be cash registers which were set aside to play with the books. How far along have we come with connecting these cash registers?
I think what has happened is we have made progress, and of course connecting the the cash registers to the tax office. Of course there's a need for effective technology to be in place, and because most of these supermarkets, they have point of sale systems. So certainly there's certain requirements that needs to happen to upgrade their software so that they sort of connect real time to the tax office. So what's happening at this point in time is as we progress on the project, we needed to do a very comprehensive regulations around it, because you need to have certain accreditation standards and meeting the standards. So that's in progress. I think we are expecting in the recent weeks we can finalize regulations on that. And of course world over not very many countries have this. So some advanced economies have it. So building the legislation around it has taken a bit of a time. But we need to make it really watertight sort of thing. Because we will all appreciate whilst technology has brought in so much facility, but at the same time there's great room for manipulation if you do it at that level. So we really needed to tidy that up. We have already tested because there's going to be two options. One is the virtual devices, and the other one will be physical devices. So virtual devices is sort of over the cloud technology. So some businesses are using cloud technology to operate their point of sale. So we have done some tests with them, and I think they are ready to go live. So as soon as the regulations come into being, and then we are happy to will be ready to implement that. And of course the physical devices one, certainly once we get the individual supermarkets to update their softwares, we should be ready to roll that out as well.
Since this announcement was made, Fazrul, have you seen any change of behavior or any change of numbers in terms of what you get from supermarkets? Has there been a sudden spike in tax payments?
Yeah, I think generally we have seen improvements in number that has been reported to FRCA. Like we had mentioned, we are doing the normal VAT audit checks on the companies. Especially we are zeroing into the supermarket sector because it is of interest to us at the present time. Certainly there has been some change in behavior, but to sustain that behavioral change, is need to have this investment in the technology that we want. And I'm sure it will be a success because it's all about information that has been reported to FRCA.
And with that, we've come to the end of yet another segment. We'll be back shortly. Good evening and welcome back to the show. One of the emerging issues in a wide sector of Fiji is technology, with advancements in handheld devices, smart devices, availability of new software, people are able to do a lot more. And as is human behavior, people will try to take advantage of that and subvert or not pay their taxes. Are you finding that this is happening a lot? And what are some of the cases that you've seen, Fazrul?
I think generally speaking, when we talk about the digital economy,
it is a problem basically for every tax jurisdiction, and you may have noted that in recent times we are trying to sign a multilateral instrument around that, so that we are able to have clear tax rules around residency and source of the income, which is due with the technology. So digital economy is a problem for every tax jurisdiction. In our local setting, we are observing businesses are importing goods and they're using technology, they're advertising it through online. And we have been seeing a number of whistleblowing cases that have been reported to us on certain situations. So something was bought from a particular individual and it was not supplied to, and some other consideration in the equation. But as far as tax is concerned, we are very much mindful of the fact that a business transaction can also happen through technology. So it is in our interest to truly understand what is the scale of the transaction and what is the value, and of course whether there are any VAT elements. If the business is registered for VAT, then of course the business needs to pay VAT. We also like to know if the importation is of a regular nature, because somebody could come to Fiji just like a one-off transaction, and of course there are exemptions of around $400 at the post office. There's $1,000 duty exemption if you carry things in your hand carry luggage. But if it is a continuous behavior where things are brought into the country, and again by using technology as well, able to sell it off or actually able to buy those goods online as well. So those are the challenges to FRCA. We have noted a number of cases around that. But again, we are prepared to go and investigate such cases, and also realizing the fact that it is not something that is quite easy. It is a problem for every tax jurisdiction, because goods may be acquired from overseas, from some other third country. So we need to go right down to the source of where it was imported, who supplied it, what was the true value of price. But we are on top of our game as well. I think we have been successful in doing auditing and investigating such cases.
A lot of this happens on social media. Somebody will set up an account and they will sell clothes, electronic goods and what have you. They may believe that they don't have to pay taxes because it's not a business, they're just buying and selling. What do you say to that?
No, that is also a business, and you know, in some respects, you know, it is also like, you know, distorts the level playing field for the businesses that are physically set up. So, you know, there are a number of cases through customs, you know, through whistleblowers as well, you know, we have come across, and we have done some investigations, and I'm sure, you know, the community must be aware that some people are complaining of the fact that, you know, they're receiving gifts from overseas, and, you know, the customs is making it difficult. But, you know, it's not that. I think one-off gifts are allowed in law, and that's okay. But just as Fazil said, you know, if it becomes a regular pattern, I think it is good enough to establish that actually there's a business in operation.
Is there a lot of excuse me? Is there a lot of leakage happening because of this online trading, or is it mostly small operators?
Like if you look at like the entire works of how it happens, I think presently we have small operators who tend to capitalize on technology by ordering things online, and goods get physically being delivered through wharves or airports and so forth. So at the present time, it is not that significant, if I could say, in that regard. But generally, it is something that is picking up a lot of interest and momentum. And of course, we do have our checks and balances as well, as CEO has mentioned. If something is being ordered online, it has to be physically cleared in Fiji somewhere. And of course, we are requiring the actual tax identification numbers to be declared, to be produced at the time of the clearance of goods. And in recent times, we have done the profiling as well. We are profiling people. Behind the scenes, we are profiling people who are selling goods on Facebook and other social media as well. So all in all, we are aware of the business transactions happening through online, which is good for business as well. But I think from the taxation perspective, we need to ensure that appropriate taxes are being collected and being declared.
Let's look at border control at this point. In recent times, we've had a lot of incidents of people being caught at the borders bringing in cash, large sums of cash in different currency. The trend that we've noticed is that a lot of these travelers are from the Asian continent, and they can be carrying amounts of up to 10,000 or even 50,000, if memory serves correctly. Is this a trend, or is this that they're ignorant of the law?
I think usually the agents will say that they're ignorant of the law, but I think it's more of a trend. It's more of a trend. And it's if I can correctly say, it's more of a money laundering issue. And very honestly, for customs, it is a day in, day out kind of seizures we do at the airport. But given the process that we have in place with police and FFIU, so cases we do seizures, and then we forward the cases for prosecution to them.
Well, I mean, Fiji is being used as a gateway, or is the money destined for Fiji?
Many a times, it is destined for Fiji, and of course, as a transit point for, it's like, our region. In our region, it is known that Fiji is a sort of a transit point for illicit drugs and all those. So, that's part of it.
It's a situation of where Fiji is doing well. The economy is growing. People want to take advantage of that. They want a piece of the pie, but they don't want to do it legally. Is that what could be happening?
Yeah. That's what's happening. They bring in money, and sort of one of the area of intel that we do is I think it's quite obvious. You see the rise in the number of probably Asian businesses around our cities, and many times you find these businesses quite empty, yet they're making profit. So more of a money laundering activity happening.
But you are looking into these.
Yes, definitely.
Of course, you can't give details, but it's something that sort of sticks out like a sore thumb.
Yes. We have our customs and tax intel team, who do all this, combined with the police. We have the transnational crime unit as well. So we have all intel happening, and that's where we pick up cases and then either get it for prosecution or necessary investigations.
Very quickly, Fazrul, in this particular aspect, could you tell us if we could see some results in coming weeks or months, or what exactly we can look forward to? Very quickly.
Yes, exactly. I think when somebody brings in the money into the country, so that money has to be spent somewhere. And largely we are seeing money being spent in the real estate sector. There is buying of properties. When that happens, we do have stamp duty checks. We do have capital gains checks. And of course, when we assess the transaction and if the behavior looks suspicious, we do our normal checks, which is the normal audit, and the verification with the banks as well. So the bottom line is that we do check the actual source of the income. Where was the source of the income? If the money has been coming from overseas, we like to understand which country it come from and whether it has gone through the normal checks in those countries as well. So ultimately, in terms of results, we are actually seeing results on the ground. We are seeing a growth in the capital tax, the capital gains tax revenue. Stamp duty revenue is also on the rise. But generally speaking, we are also aware of the fact that there are people buying multiple houses in the same streets, for example. The cars that have been bought using such monies. So all in all, we are definitely seeing the results, and there's more results to come as well.
Well, we are supposed to go for a break, but I'm very interested in what happens with the cash when you seize it. Is it locked away, or what's the process there?
Well, there is, when it is with customs, the customs law actually allows, treats the cash as goods. So under the customs law, the cash can be detained, and then but generally when it goes to through the I understand through the police process, generally they're taken to court and they're fined, and some of the times when the currencies are returned. But we are more focusing on our processes whereby we can sort of detain the cash as goods, and also it can be covered under the proceeds of crime as well.
Gentlemen, we'll take another break. We'll be back after this break. Good evening and welcome back to For the Record. We are about to finish off for this evening, but before we go, we've talked about revenue collection, tax evasion, border control. FRCA itself as an agency is constantly changing and adapting. What sort of plans do you have in terms of service delivery? I understand a lot of your services are going to go online, so what can we expect, say if somebody walks into FRCA in a year or two?
I think, as part of our transformation process, certainly we are becoming more proactive and more customer focused. So therefore now you see, we have a greater number of sort of physical offices in different districts. I think in the coming months, we are trying to set up a office in Osori as well. Followed by that, we may be looking at the Buni as well, looking at the concentration of taxpayers. We have sort of, at this stage, we are also into acquiring a new tax information system, whereby we intend to get all our services online, so that actually taxpayers can lodge online, pay online. This is all in progress, and at the same time, to improve our services and make it more like one-stop shop. Actually, we are also undergoing the restructure of the organization. So what we are doing is, in terms of tax and customs, we are putting all the common services together, and likewise for all the investigation, audit, all these things are also being put together.
And finally, first rule moving forward in terms of tax collection and compliance, what can we look forward to?
I think generally speaking, I think there has been a lot of progress being done by FRCA in the area of modernizing its tax laws. We are currently modernizing our operations through this restructure. We are having effective engagement with stakeholders. And of course, some of the emerging issues had been around simplifying it further. I think one of the significant things that is going to happen in time to come is to use technology in FRCA to do its operation. We are moving in the era of e-lodgement, e-payment. Basically, we want to ensure that taxpayers are able to pay taxes from the comfort of their bedrooms. I think it's all about making it easier, making it simpler. And that's why we are quite forthright and quite bold in saying that in this era of low tax rates, in the era of this simplified tax system, like we feel there's no room for any fraud. So the future is about making it more simpler, and at the same time taking the fraudulent taxpayers to task. And we want to actually see some people behind the bars as well in time to come, those that are deliberately, recklessly and willfully are trying to evade and avoid taxes.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for being on the show. That was all we have time for tonight. Best of luck with all your work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that was For the Record for this evening. If you have any comments or questions, you can email us fortherecord@fbc.com.fj.